Hi, Jackie.
Hi. I'm glad this worked out.
Me too.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah. Out here in our sodden June. Very wet and lovely, lush.
Well, Tanis asked me to talk about how this work has had an impact for me, and it's been pretty remarkable. I know it was the late 90s when I bumped into you and first came to one of your workshops, and I was kind of, what is this stuff at first? But then kept being drawn to it. So I came back and took a few more of your courses and came for some private consults. And what I discovered is that there's a way to deal with issues that you've been stuck around, issues that have, in essence, kind of ridden you like a black dog on your back for years and years. So you keep finding yourself in these situations where something triggers you, and all of a sudden you're not reacting to the circumstances you're actually in. You're reacting to old stuff that you've gotten reminded of, and it's usually not conscious at all, but it takes you out of being able to respond to the moment in a way that is really important to me if I want to be active in terms of making positive change in the world. And so it's been quite a journey. It's been really exciting. I met my husband this way.
Yes, you did.
And it's this sense of stepping more and more fully into your power over time to have a positive impact in the world. And where Tanis calls it advanced energy healing, I call it Tanis's toolbox because I'm much more practical. and for me, it's a profoundly helpful thing that I started using right away in my own life, and also in the lives of my clients. And I call it just straight trauma release, because that's something that more people can recognize and go, oh, well, what's that about? Because energy still kind of weirds people out a bit.
All right. So shall we talk about how this work works for trauma release?
I think that would be a really good idea.
Okay. So this work begins with a real understanding of the human energy fields, and that we are each made up of this nested series of fields, and that different stuff is going on in each of the fields. So when a person suffers a trauma, whether it be physical or emotional or whatever, they feel a big reaction. In our normal world, we know that the body's gone through a reaction, and we're getting smarter about knowing that the psyche and the emotions have gone through a reaction. But starting from the foundation of this work, we realize that that reaction is in each one of the fields. So the emotional field has had a big reaction to whatever the fear, the uncertainty, the confusion, whatever, all the different emotions that have come up during the trauma. The mental body of this lifetime has laid down an exact recording, really literally millisecond by millisecond, of the event. And it's all stored in what we think of as body memory, but it's actually stored in the mental field. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the soul field, which is made up of the whole history of humanity, is having a reaction to whatever this trauma is and aligning it with all, really, humanity's history of similar traumas. So maybe in this lifetime, maybe what I've had is a boyfriend who didn't stop when I said no. And I went through an unpleasant, possibly not devastating, not a really terrible experience, but a scary, like an unpleasant experience. Well, in the soul field, what wakes up is humanity's history of rape and pillage and sexual violence of many types. So also the trauma is happening, and the spiritual higher consciousness fields are also present during the trauma. So the scary, horrible parts are going on in the denser, more manifesting fields of energy that have humanity in them and have my personal experience and the moment recorded in them. And so the way to effect really powerful trauma recovery through this work is to literally be able to re-access the moment of the trauma in each of the fields, and to bring each of the fields into contact with that higher consciousness spiritual field which was present during the trauma, even though I didn't know enough to access it. But I can go back, and it's as though I've accessed it, so that what actually gets laid down in the timeline can be replaced, because we can actually go back and find that exact spot. It's a little bit like editing in film, where you can reshoot a new episode, a new piece of that, and go back in and actually insert the new higher self present experience, rather than the original no higher self in sight terrifying experience.
And it's just such a profound relief when you do that, because essentially you take a younger self who went through something that they didn't know how to cope with and were just like and what you've done is you've given them oh, that's what's going on, and I've got help, and I'm not alone, and I just have to get through this, and I'll be fine. And so it's just a really big shift in attitude.
Very much so, yeah. And so we can really heal anything. It doesn't have to be a big trauma like a car accident or a violent episode. It's just those normal little traumas of falling off your tricycle, or coming home and nobody's there, or waking up crying in the middle of the night. Yeah. Or we can, in fact, heal the collective human history of those murder and mayhem that our collective history is so full of.
So have you talked about how you got into doing this kind of stuff?
No, actually.
Well, I think that would be a really worthwhile thing to cover.
Well, let's see now. Back in my childhood, I was very spiritually oriented and grew up really involved in my local church, and by the time I was about 11, I really wanted to be a minister in the United Church, but that was not to be. I was actually told at that age that I couldn't be a minister because I was a girl, which wasn't formally true at the time. I could have, but it was certainly culturally true at the time that that was the wise advice being given to 11-year-old girls. No, dear, you can't be a minister because you're a girl. So after that shocking revelation, which probably sparked my feminist awakening, I went off and did many other things, all of which now weave together into this work. So fast forward to my late 30s. I'm living in a very challenging marriage with a brilliant and wonderful man, but emotionally very challenging. We have 4 children. I also have a child from a previous marriage, so I've actually been married twice and have 5 children. And the end of that marriage is really on the horizon. It's really quite destined that that's not going to last. And I joined a women's group, and in that group, I reinitiated my spiritual path, which I had been on so devotedly as a young person, but had really dropped for the years of my married years. And I have a PhD in economics and was working as an economics prof. And during that whole era of getting my education and having my children and being married, I wasn't really into my spiritual work at all. So I actually had a real Kundalini awakening one morning. The first morning that I actually took the time, got up early before anybody, and lay down to meditate on purpose, the way that I had done in my early 20s. And I had a massive Kundalini awakening. It was like it just tore all the covers and blew off all the pots, and I realized that life was really going to change. And so my journey took me out of that marriage. It took me into realizing that I really was a healer. Actually, the part of being a prof that I liked the best was office hours with the students, inspiring them and helping them to know who they were and what they were good at. And that the journey took me to my first big teacher, who was Tom Brown Jr., who I learned to live in the spirit that moves through all things, to know energy to live with energy awareness, to be able to track energies through time, to track them through location, to be able to move my own point of awareness beyond my physical body out through nature. Fantastic things that I learned with Tom. He's really my primary, first, most beloved teacher. And not that he was my first teacher, but he was my first really big teacher.
Yeah.
And I think he got me so he could recognize that the energetic stuff was very true for me. He's a very wise soul with profound perception. And then I moved from Tom's school to a school that was at that time called the School of Energy Mastery, where I learned advanced energy healing from Dr. Robert Jaffe, who is now known as Ibrahim. He's a beautiful, very devoted to the path of love, and he's now a Sufi teacher and profoundly teaches through the heart, through the path of the beloved, it used to be called. I don't know if he still calls it that or not. But in my years with Ibrahim, I learned this esoteric tradition of the energy fields and of advanced energy healing, which is new. The energy fields are ancient, but the advanced energy healing is new. So in my own journey, and I was studying in the early 90s and the mid-90s with those teachers. So then I began to integrate my own intellectual PhD economics, mother of all these kids, real world woman with my energetic perception, tracking energies, being able to be in contact with the unity consciousness and the spirit that moves through all things, with knowledge of the energy fields, healing skills, and the mystical path of really deep surrender to love and to God through the heart. And knowing that divine consciousness where we are all this one amazing being that is manifest in these human and physical forms, but also manifesting in all kinds of other ways of consciousness.
Interesting ways.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And so I've now been practicing this work for, I don't know, actually 15 years or more, and it has all melded together into this stream, which is really known as the School of Energy Enlightenment, and is not like those things, although the roots of all of it show up in this work. And it really is its own channel, its own body of knowledge now that has kind of synthesized and grown from there. And a great deal of what I teach has actually been downloaded to me through meditations, nighttime dreams, definitely working with clients, and through the teaching work. I've been teaching this material since the late 90s. And each time that it's taught, it grows a little. And so I launched the School of Energy Enlightenment in 2010 as a comprehensive program where all of the material is integrated into a structured program where you can learn it all over the course of 2 years. And if you want to do it in healership for other people, then you add the certification program onto the end of that.
What I really love about what you've done is the way you've brought together some global traditions around healing the spirit and healing everything else. Because when you look at what indigenous healers do in traditional societies, the indigenous healers are usually using some kind of herbal or other medicine. They're usually using some kind of hands-on work that has to do with physical realignment or manipulation of some sort. And they're usually doing some kind of access of spiritual truth that allows them to say, this issue isn't resolved in your life, and we need to surface that and deal with it so that you can get well, so that your own healing system can turn back on again. And I find that so beautiful. It feels to me as though your work paired with the trauma release work of Dr. Scare. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Isn't it funny that Dr. Scare would be doing trauma release work?
We do follow that.
Yeah. And Dr. Hammer's work with German New Medicine, linking the mind and body. I think we're right on that cusp of being able to say, this is how people heal. It's not just physical. You don't heal physically if your mind, your emotions, and your spirit aren't also part of that process of letting go and healing, allowing the healing to happen.
Yeah. The way that I relate to that is that we actually are made of these energy fields.
Yes.
Right? It's not a sort of a fanciful idea. Well, I wonder what it would be like if we were made of energy fields. Let's pretend that for a while and make up cool stuff about what that would be like. It's like we actually are made of these energy fields. And in the work of the school, everyone discovers that through their own experience. You know, from the very beginning, it's like, okay, the fields exist, find your way to them. What does it feel like to feel your own emotional field, to feel your own mental field, and this great big third eye chakra mental body where we all tend to hang out most of the time. Most people hang out in their mental body most of the time. And it's really the first step of any of the spiritual traditions. Meditation is about, don't be in the third eye chakra of the mental body. Like, come on in and be in everything. Have access to it, make use of it, but not be parked out there where that's the only thing you're doing. And so all of these different traditions, the ancient traditions, the modern traditions, they're making use of something related to the energy fields. And so knowing the energy fields means that you actually get to get better effect out of all of those things. If you know that what you're doing is accessing a spot in the mental body, well then with these skills you know how to access it really effectively.
Yes.
Right? And if you know that in basically, here's a definition, that my definition of healing is that healing happens in the moment when the location of trauma in whatever field it's in is met with and merges with the underlying spiritual consciousness and spiritual truth. That the moment that they merge together, so that spirit is brought back into a moment where it wasn't known to be present, healing happens right then. Like, spirit consciousness, which is love, which is unity, which is all these wonderful things we're looking for, right? Compassion, gentle, tranquil, respectful, honoring, amusing, neutral, like all these, this is what we all want. And it's all right here. We take it with us everywhere we go in fields of consciousness that are really easy to access. So healing happens in the moment when we reconnect with that spiritual truth.
Well, there's, yes, mental, emotional, spiritual healing happens in that moment. But then there's this physical healing thing that has to happen.
Yes.
And physically, we're, yes, we're made of energy, but we're made of a whole bunch of different elements as well that come together in different ways. And physical healing can actually be delayed or not even happen if you don't have the right physical components in your body or in your food or in your other nourishment that are allowing you to supply the physical healing that needs to happen.
This is true.
So there's this dovetailing of, okay, you know, when you release this stuff, it's not just releasing it. You're often doing a detoxification of old, stuck, sludgy stuff. And then that detoxification puts a layer of challenge on your physiology. So sometimes there's this feeling of being dragged out after doing this work. And then you know, the healing has its own demands for rest, for nutrients, for self-care. And if those pieces don't get put in place, you can get in pretty rough shape.
Yes, it's true. Now, let's think of it energetically. I saw this wonderful thing. I don't know who made it. It seems to me maybe it was NASA, but I don't remember who. It was a thing that I saw on the internet that shows us from our human body heading down into the cells, the molecules, the atoms, the quarks and quarks, right down to the like minus, you know, x to the minus 37th or whatever it is, like the tiniest things that have been discovered. And then back up into our human body, and then from our human bodies up to the planet, the solar system, the universe. And how big is the universe and how small is the smallest? And the thing that fascinated me is that our human bodies are roughly halfway along that distribution, but we're actually a little bit bigger than half. So imagine how much is going on in our bodies all the time. And so what you're saying, Jackie, is so important, that we do the energetic healing, but we want the cells and the molecules and the atoms to be able to come along with us.
Yes.
And so eating beautiful, fresh food that is filled with its own spiritual perfection adds energetically to those underlying component parts in our body, something that is in alignment with the perfection and beauty of nature. When we eat something that's highly processed, has been grown with a lot of chemical or other factors affecting it,
Or
basically
has been altered away from its original blueprint.
Yes, definitely, yeah. The GMO is inserting one blueprint from one organism into a blueprint from another organism, which is very hard for the organism to figure out what to do with. Yes, that energetically there's a signature in each thing, as a manifesting part of God, of the universe, of oneness, of evolution. And we are all a part of that. So our body is actually part of it. And our body works very healthily when it's allowed to be in the natural flow with all of these things. It doesn't work well when it starts to get stuff that doesn't have that life force in it, or has been really modified away from its natural source. And, dead food. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when you eat dead food, you don't get live energy, so your body then has to cope with, it is getting something that it makes use of. The organs are there, the systems are there, very complex, and it makes use of it, but it's not supporting it. And so it's true that to support this energetic healing and spiritual healing, we want to use the energy and the spirit of nature to help us do it well and cleanly.
One of the things that I've really noticed is for people who step into this kind of work of healing on all levels, there are a whole bunch of patterns that you have to let go of, because when you're bringing these higher frequencies of energy into your physical system on a regular basis, your physical system protests a lot louder when you do things that aren't optimal for it. And so what's so interesting is watching, there's almost a dovetailing of learning about physical health as people go through this journey of being able to carry higher and higher frequencies in their daily life, and therefore being able to act in a more increasingly empowered way.
Yeah, it's true. As we walk the journey, we go through different phases, different evolutionary phases. You can attach it to the ascension process as we're really embodying different levels of consciousness, and the body needs to align with each one of those. So I know in my own journey, things like, what is my relationship with alcohol? Sometimes I go through periods of time where I cannot go anywhere near alcohol. And I actually had about a 3.5-year time period where, I just couldn't. Every once in a while I would test it, and I would have these bizarre energetic experiences. I remember taking a glass of scotch and just bringing it to smell it, and it was like, whoa, whoa! These really bizarre energetic sort of internal reactions to the energy of it. Other times, I'm absolutely fine, and in fact guided to have a beer each day, or to ride a very different wave of relationship with alcohol. So it's much more about learning how this organic evolutionary process is engaging with the other material of life, and being guided through contact with spirit and through embodying spirit to know what is the right thing, being guided towards foods at certain times, away from foods at other times. Another thing to say on this same topic about the body is that different people are embodied very differently. It's almost like we're different species. We're like different types of plants. They're all plants, but they look different and they behave differently. And some people's bodies are tuned to be extremely sensitive, highly, highly sensitive and reactive to things that don't align well with them. Other people basically can do anything.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so it's important also to just acknowledge that
Yeah.
if there are people who are feeling like, I'm doing all this work and my body's not doing much of anything, what am I doing wrong? It's like, no, you're blessed. You don't have to worry about what your body's doing.
Yeah.
And that other people who really do have extreme sensitivities to know, well, that's part of their journey and part of their learning, is that we are all unique. We're all going to learn different aspects. It's going to depend partly on our talents and interests, but it's partly going to depend on our limitations and our challenges and struggles as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've been teaching this work for a long time, and it's been, named different things. My sense is that this work that you're doing is not only life changing, but it's world changing.
That's
Because
true.
as people step into their clarity with their fields in alignment, they're able to act with clarity.
Mhm.
They're able to let go of a whole bunch of patterns that aren't serving them anymore.
And they usually move into sacred activism one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us more about the school.
All right. So the school has an in-person component where people come to, it's currently in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. I also can run courses anywhere else, but I can't organize them anywhere else. So if people want me to teach courses elsewhere, they need to invite me. But I always say I will go anywhere I'm invited. So we have a 2-year program. In the 2-year program, there are 8 courses. So a student comes to the school once every season for 2 full years. And they come for 6 days. So there's a 6-day program. Sometimes we run it as a 6-day unit. Sometimes we run it as 2 3-day weekends. But it's still one course of 6 days. The content in the courses develops. You start by learning the energy fields, learning connection with higher consciousness and the massive amount of information about guidance and intuition and who's working with you and all of that good stuff. We do a whole week on this lifetime, the personality level, the timeline, all the inner children, defense mechanisms, all these things that are part of our personalities. We do a whole week on the soul. Who are we as a unique, authentic being on the planet? What is the role of the collective history of humanity? And how to live on a soul level with all the other creatures of the planet, how to communicate through energetic awareness with plants and animals. So that makes up the first year. The second year, we learn healing skills. We work in relationships and group consciousness, and we do a lot of the work of the mystical work, surrender, the path of the beloved, and some very cool stuff that you can really only get to by starting to live deeply energetically. So, and then there's a program for people who want to certify in advanced energy healing. It's a 16-month program, and those students meet 4 times. And they learn how to do the work in healership for other people rather than just for themselves. The whole first 2 years you learn skills, but it's for personal use, to do personal healing. So now the school is going online. A new website, and I'm going to be teaching the same material through webinars.
I can't wait.
Yeah, me too. It's been very steep learning curves, but I've been actually really enjoying it. So the first webinar, it will be a 9-week course, and it covers the same material as that first introductory week of the school. There will be a 1.5-hour lecture webinar, not a lecture, I shouldn't call it, but a teaching unit on Wednesday evenings, and then there's a question and answer period on Sunday afternoons, and there are 2 early morning guided meditations on Tuesday and Friday mornings.
Nice.
So it makes 4 contact points through the week for the students. Everything is recorded, so if you can't make it live, you can always go back and listen to it after the fact. So that's the program. So that runs for 9 weeks, and it covers the first material. There will also be some way for the students to be in touch with each other, conference call, telephone lines where people can just collectively get together to talk, probably an online forum where people can get together to text and to share. There are weekly personal integration questions. So if someone really comes into that course and is committed to staying with it, learning the material of it, they ought to learn the full content of that first week of the school.
Are you going to have an evaluative piece as people go along so they get a sense of how they're doing with each chunk of material?
We'll certainly have experiential work, lots of experiential work, and the question and answer period, if people want to be on screen, so they share their webcam with me so that I can actually connect in with them energetically. I can connect by voice, but I can connect better if I can actually see them. They'll get one-on-one. And of course there's always one-on-one sessions that people can book with me as well, which are often really helpful for when you come up against stuck spots.
Oh yeah, when you don't have the right tools to get through that next, blockade. Yeah.
So that's the structure, and the first class runs from September to November, and then we'll take a break until January, and in January the second class will run. I don't know exactly how many weeks it will be, somewhere, the goal is to have each one of the courses be somewhere between 6 and 10 weeks to be able to cover all of the material in it. And it will cost, if people enroll with the early bird discount, it will cost $327.
So it's very accessible.
I hope so.
Oh.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
It's a little bit less than half the cost of being in person. I mean, in person you really get the personal read, the personal scans, and the group consciousness in a room, which is juicy. I'm hoping that online people still get all of the content, but perhaps without that one-on-one.
Yeah.
So I should also add that everything that is recorded will then also become available for purchase on the website.
Perfect.
As a fixed piece, both the whole course and the individual classes. So if someone just wants to pick and choose a few of those nights worth of class and the question and answer that goes with it, they will be able to just buy that 3 hours worth of material as a standalone piece as well.
Oh, I could see a lot of people being very happy about that for
Yes,
the energetic defense systems.
Absolutely. And many of the other juicy nuggets.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Jackie. It's been really wonderful talking to you today. I'm thinking it's going to rain shortly and our sound might go, so...
Yeah, we've had a few sprinkles, so it'll be good timing. Well, this worked out really well.
Yeah, thank you.